The first week of the MLB season is in the books, and the same could be said for AAA. As far as the Braves are concerned, everything's gotten off to a pretty smooth start as they begin the year in first place. Same thing can go for AAA, at least as far as the guys that we are interested in that could at least contribute this year in the majors. Basically, the entire Gwinnett rotation showed out through the first week of the season. We talked about Bryce Elder earlier in the week. He had probably the best start of anybody in the organization. 6 1/3 innings, 7 strikeouts. Most importantly, I believe, no walks. Dylan Dodd also had 5 scoreless innings in his first start. He did walk 5. That's going to be an issue to keep an eye on, but he's another guy that could be ready in a pinch. Same can be said for Alan Winans, 5 2/3, and he gave up a couple of runs, but he's another guy with good enough stuff to be major league ready. Then you can go look at the guys that could potentially go in the bullpen. Huascar Ynoa, he had a start, 4 scoreless innings in his first start since August of 2022. That's obviously good to see. Dosbel Hernandez, he's had 2 2/3 scoreless innings. Jackson Stevens, 2 scoreless innings. Ken Giles, first save opportunity went well. So literally everyone that you could pretty much be like, hey, they could contribute this year. Guys that we talked about that could have made the roster performed really well. And listen, the guys in the major league at the major league level better be on their toes because these guys are ready to contribute at the major league level.
Listen, worst case scenario, we bump into some injuries and we've got plenty of depth wherever it is, whether it's the rotation, whether it's the bullpen, and there's flexibility too. You know, Ronaldo Lopez can go back to the bullpen if need be. And, you know, Bryce Elder is very clearly that 6th guy who's going to get the call up if anything comes up, whether it's an injury or Ronaldo Lopez struggles after his next few starts and moves him to the bullpen, whatever it may be. The Braves have the bodies in both areas on the pitching staff to withstand pretty much whatever blow you could think about. Obviously, best case scenario, nobody gets hurt. Ronaldo Lopez solidifies himself as the 5th start in the rotation. You know, Chris Sale stays healthy. Charlie Morton continues to be an Ironman. Max Fried stays healthy. Spencer Strider continues to lead the rotation. Obviously, we know how deep the bullpen is. And one thing outside of just injuries, like you said, these guys got to be on their toes. Like, people are gunning for your jobs. And I don't know if that's ever really been the case in my recent memory. Obviously, you know the Braves a little bit better than me, but this just feels like an abundance of resources where it's like we're just spoiled at this point. Like this Gwinnett rotation, which doesn't even have the top prospect, your top prospect, and Hurston Waldrop, could go toe-to-toe with some of the worst MLB rotations, like the Rockies or the A's. Like, it's pretty wild that we're talking about a AAA rotation that could potentially produce a postseason guy. Like Bryce Elder pitched in the postseason last year, would have pitched well had Brian Snitker managed it a little bit better. That's crazy. NL All-Star in Gwinnett. Just biding time. Time.
AJ Smith-Shawver hasn't pitched yet. Hurston Waldrop hasn't pitched yet, so I didn't even bring up those guys. It's not because they performed poorly. We just haven't even seen them yet. And those are probably the 2 guys you're most excited about out of all of them. Bryce Elder, I mean, you're legitimately talking about 7, 8, 9 guys that are major league ready that are sitting in the minor leagues. And you said, you know, you've never seen it before. I've never seen it before. I like, this is the deepest group of pitchers, and it's relievers, it's starting pitchers, it's everybody.
It's flexibility.
Like Aaron Bummer might be your worst reliever right now in the majors, and that guy has some good stuff and has the potential to be kind of like a left-handed Colin McHugh. That's what he kind of reminds me of, and that's your 8th guy right now, and he better be on his toes because he had a couple bad outings to start the year. Dosbel Hernandez is a strikeout maestro. He's been that throughout his career, and we saw a glimpse of that last year when he made his MLB debut. There are so many guys that an embarrassment of riches doesn't even do it justice. It truly is. I've never seen anything like it. I really have not.
Yeah, and you know, obviously the talk of the town, it wasn't the great outing. It was the fastball velocity. You know, he used to kiss triple digits when we were all expecting him to be a staple of the rotation. Now he's in the low 90s. And he was still very effective. I think that's more notable than the fastball. Is like the fastball wasn't there. And I think, you know, when you're off that amount of time, you know, especially with Tommy John, I think that you would be a fool to expect anybody to come back and be even remotely close. You got to work your way back. And I think, maybe he'll never be 98 again, but was quite effective in the low 90s. If he gets back to the mid 90s, watch out.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happened. We'll see what was up with that radar gun. I want to see what happens the next start, because sometimes those radar guns can be a little off and they don't make a lot of sense. Now, I didn't get the chance to watch him live. I just watched the highlights after the fact. It still looked like he had some life on that fastball. So we'll see what happens as it goes. I definitely think it's lower than it was, but I would be a little bit surprised if it sticks around 92 as he continues going into this season. But it's an embarrassment of riches. One other guy I want to mention, JP Martinez. He's the only position player really worth keeping an eye on in Gwinnett. Off to a really hot start, 421 batting average, a couple of home runs. If Forrest Wall, they want to send him back to AAA, watch out for him. He's definitely the next outfielder and really the next position player in line. Coming up after the break, was the Julio Jones trade a kind of a good deal for the Atlanta Falcons?